crazier than a fox.
I'm starting my stream now, too.
You are overdriven.
Am I?
You got to back up off that thing. You got a big...
But why?
Back that thing up.
Okay, check 1, 2. Whoa, holy crap, you're not kidding.
You're still peaking a little.
Okay, is this any better? Test 1, 2, test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
It's better.
Why was it like this earlier?
No.
What the hell?
Is OBS doing something?
Something? I don't know. Why? All the Linux... Audio and video in Linux is just so easy normally. I don't know why this is a problem.
Said no one ever.
Said no one ever. Okay. Am I still distorting?
Not now.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the link. Yes,
all right. Okay.
Damn it, Bobby. What in the hell?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about with me and cussing. As for my stream and cussing, I try not to cuss too much on my stream because normally I cuss like a sailor. But since we're going to be having honest conversations, I'm not too worried about it. But anytime we are recording for what's going to go on your podcast, I know you guys don't like it. So,
well, we don't.
We've
said hell and damn.
Well.
But yeah.
I'm from California. That's not cussing.
No, well, I'm a person. That's not cussing.
Well, I've known many Bible belters who will disagree with that, but.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I was raised in that house.
Streaming again. Better now?
I heard myself on the stream. Like if I unmute, I've got the stream up in case there are questions. If I unmute the stream, I hear us. I will tell you, my level going out of the stream is lower than yours.
Yeah, jeez. Okay. Yeah, I can't get yours up to the volume, input volume, or Skype audio volume on OBS is at full, and you are peaking out at about 50% on the VU. I don't think it's a linear scale, but
wow, that's it.
Yeah,
weird. Well, I don't want to get up on. Well, see, I'm not.
Skype's 100%.
Actually, that is weird because Skype normally compresses the hell out of things and makes them super loud.
All the volumes.
All the volumes. All the dBs. All the watts.
So it sounds like Kenneth wants to come on and peanut gallery us tonight while we're chatting.
Outstanding. I had to apologize to him because I called him KFW.
Oh, I'm sure worse things have happened.
Yeah. You know, but it's funny because I take getting people's names right like very seriously. Like to me, that is like base common decency 101. Making a point to say somebody's name correctly.
Yeah. KF7IJZ had followed me. Oh wow.
Yeah,
really?
I didn't realize I wasn't. Like I felt really embarrassed.
Oh my gosh, Jeremy followed me. I'm gonna be all fanboy now.
Yeah, that's the weirdest part about all this.
I know, right?
Okay, that didn't actually. See, there's about a minute delay in the video stream.
Yeah, there is.
I'm trying to get my mic to blur out, or not blur out. Oh, wait, I should look at my stream. I should look at my local Skypes.
And unfortunately, I can't get Skype to take an output from OBS, so you can't see what I'm streaming except through the stream.
Yeah. Man, okay, that's maybe I should go turn that light off. Because in order to get my mic to conceal it, I have to be like way over here. Well, I don't want to lean like that.
That kind of hurts my back. My chiropractor will have words.
Yeah, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go shut that light off.
Okie dokie.
And I'm going to go refill the famous KF7IJZ iced tea.
Iced tea. I got hot tea tonight, although I am doing herbals because it's so late. But he says to the guy who's 3 hours ahead.
I was going to say, like, this was the can of Power Coffee was earlier. But the good news is, because we do get along, I actually got super excited about all this, and I'm not worried about falling asleep. Actually, the biggest thing that I was worried about tonight is that we, all day long, they've been predicting storm apocalypse to roll through the greater Cincinnati area.
Yeah.
And while we did certainly have weather, it was, not that notable. And but the worst of the wind and whatnot was supposed to start hitting about now, but it looks like it has all drifted and dissipated, and so I don't expect any major storm event, which is good.
That's good. Yeah, we had some pretty gnarly weather here on the central coast of California last Friday. We had a major storm down. There are hundreds of trees down in the area. Well, our eucalyptus is practically a weed in this area, and so we've had several 150-foot tall trees just falling all over the roads. Big sections of the county were shut down. Major thoroughfares from city to city were closed. Huge areas that just had no power for hours on hours. We were without power for about 14 hours, which has renewed my interest in, I think I emailed you and George about the 12-volt charge controller project I want to work on. Kenneth was actually down here just last weekend, and he and I brainstormed some time. I think I've got a design of something I want to work on as a solar charge controller and AC charge control. Solar PV input, AC input into a charge controller that prefers solar when it's available but uses AC when it's not, to charge a battery and supply a load, but do all of its current limiting only on the current into the battery, so it'll supply however much current out to the load is necessary, irrespective of the
actual state of charge.
Exactly. So, if you've got a 4 amp charge current, like on my 20 amp hour lithium iron phosphate, but your load is drawing 6 amps, it will go ahead and output 10 amps if it can. And it will get as much of it from solar as it can. And if it can't, then it will pull from AC. And that way you keep your batteries topped off. You still have battery backup for when you have no power at all. The solar will charge the batteries if you don't have any AC, or if you do have AC, you're not cycling your batteries every night. So you get to, have a battery that will actually last you forever.
Keep them nice and floated.
Yeah.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to get up and turn the light off. I'm going to refill my tea. I'm going to go make onesies, and then I will be back.
Rock and roll. I would love to see you in a onesie. Wait, no, the other thing.
You don't want to see either. You don't want to see me make onesies. You don't want to see me in a onesie. Well, I didn't realize it was going to be that kind of podcast.
Well, have you ever seen me on my... Never mind. Go. Do what you need to do. Hey, Kenneth. I see Kenneth in the chat room. Oh, it's nice and dark in his room now. Yeah, so for folks, hey, it's Smitty again. Jeremy, KF7IJZ from the Ham Radio 360 podcast, and I are going to be doing some streaming tonight. He's going to talk to me about Whisper for the Ham Radio 360 podcast. And I'm going to be talking about my Ultimate 3 kit, a little GPS on the roof, the multiple low-pass filter kits that are kind of on the piggyback there, the built-in power supply, and the transmit-receive switch that I made for it that will allow my Ultimate 3 to share an antenna with my Red Pitaya, which I'm using to receive Whisper on all bands. So we're going to be going into all kinds of details about that a little later. Oh, excuse me. Onesies, kinky. Yes, thank you, Kenneth. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and take the Red Pitaya out of the shack here. Hello, cat. Red Pitaya. Hey, Joel, how you doing? Good to have you joining us tonight. Yeah, we know. We got that fixed. Thank you, Joel. So people who are watching the stream, the first test we did, this is why we test. I didn't realize that I wasn't capturing audio from Skype. We got that fixed this time, so Jeremy's audio will make it through. Holy crap, I got 7 people watching me all at once now. I think that's the highest live watching now stream count I've had. Yeehaw! What else? Do I have... Wait, where's the other one? Where are they? Thank you. Whispernet.org. Stream hype! Oh, but it's not going to show any of my stuff because I haven't been beaconing in a while. Actually, haha, I think I can do that, and then that. Ooh, infinity! To infinity and beyond! Okay. But of course, now I can't see my OBS stream. What? Why? Wait, what? There we go. Well, that was weird. Okay, that's Whisper. There you are. One of these.
We are recording.
So am I. Of course, I'm having YouTube do the recording for me, but good enough.
Okay, yeah, you can see me well enough.
Yeah. LCDs do a remarkably good job of facial lighting.
Yes, they do.
I don't have any lighting in this room. I've got some like crappy Christmas lights up here. But I've got 4 LCD screens. I got one there, one there, one there, and one there. It's kind of a bit crazy. Kenneth, crazy, but although how funny
I had to. Oh, so that's what happens when I switch. I've got the YouTube stream up now. It doesn't provide quite as much lighting. Sorry though, I had to take the dog out. When I record late at night, he stays down here next to me and demands attention.
I hear him shaking every once in a while on your stream. Popper dogs. Joel wants to know what you're drinking, Jeremy.
I am drinking an Arizona Arnold Palmer Light.
I am drinking.
There may or may not be Woodford Reserve in it.
It's going to be one of those shows. I am drinking herbal tea of my own concoction, mostly green rooibos, lemongrass, and then some mulling spices mixes that local company makes. Orange peel, clove, some other things.
That sounds amazing. There's actually no bourbon in my tea. But that is a thing that I do occasionally.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, I have to get up tomorrow morning at probably 06:30 to get the car into a garage appointment at 8 o'clock, which was, I've had a really bad week. So being able to secure an 8 a.m. garage appointment for a standard service at a major brand dealership in the area was literally a miracle, especially since I called like midday on Thursday. They're like, we can't believe it. There's actually an appointment at 8 a.m. I was like, I'll take it.
Cha-ching.
Okay. So, hello. Oh, wow. How many people do we have?
We had 7 at one point, but we're down to 6, which is more than I usually have people watching me. So Nick Pavlinac, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. Smitty, any more appearances coming up on the Twit network? That's where I first saw you. I don't currently have anything scheduled, but Padre does call me up, out of the blue. It's like, hey, I want to talk to you about blah, whatever. And my answer to that is usually, yeah, sure, let's go. So anytime Padre or anybody else wants me on the network, I'm in. Okay, and to address a conversation that Kenneth and Joel were having, yes, the call sign KR6ZY, there's a little bit of a story behind that. So I wasn't advanced for many years. I was for a couple of years anyway. KQ6ZQ, one of the crappiest call signs I've ever had. And I was, but it was right near the end of when the advanced call sign was being offered at all. And I was watching the sequential call signs being assigned in California, and it was like KR6ZT, KR6ZU, and VWX. And I was like, okay, who's going to get KR6ZY? Because it's crazy. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, who's going to get it? I wanted to know who it was that ended up getting it. KR6ZX was the last one they assigned ever. And then they stopped handing out advanced call signs, the advanced license. So nobody got KR6ZY. And I don't know why I jumped on it as a vanity call. So KR6ZY is my call sign. It's a vanity call. I've had it since 2001-ish, 2-ish. I don't remember exactly when they stopped handing out the advance, but right around there. Yeah, so I have it on purpose. It's not an accident that it's crazy with a 6 in the middle. So, okay. Yeah. Presumably you want to get started before too long?
Podcaster persona. And I have a list of secret questions, which I have not shared with the guest.
I have no idea what he's going to ask me.
But, well, before we get started, should I refer to you as Smitty?
So I do not have a strong opinion one way or the other, whether it's Smitty or Mark. I go by both. My online persona, I tend to use Smitty for unknown reasons. When I was doing hackery things, you'll note that I'm flagging DEF CON tonight. When I was a lot more active in the hacker community, my handle was Smitty, which is not very much of a handle given that my last name is Smith. But it's just kind of the online persona I've used. But it's not like I make a secret of the fact that my name is Mark. I really have no strong preference one way or the other, whichever you prefer to call me.
Well, what do you want to be called?
Let's go with Smitty because that's how most people know me, I think.
That's what I was going to go with. So for those of you watching the live stream, thank you very much for showing up. My name is Jeremy Cullinay. I am Kilo Fox 7 India Juliet Zulu. I judge zombies. This was the call sign I was given. It is terrible. And I was going to get K7JRK, which are my initials. My initials do spell jerk, which is awesome. Yeah, and actually kind of apt. But unfortunately, some other dude in California beat me to it. And I haven't really decided what I'm going to do. I am just a general, a lowly general. But I am the co-host, co-producer of the Ham Radio 360 Workbench podcast. I've been with Kale, who is the founder of the Ham Radio 360 podcast since episode 2, and had done several episodes independently and with him, and did some production work. And then when we brought George, KJ6VU, on board, we started talking about having kind of a secondary program that was really a lot more technically focused. And episode 18 of that, we'll post this coming Tuesday. We're a bi-weekly opposite of the main program. So it's basically regular Ham Radio 360 one week. The next week, it's Ham Radio 360 Workbench. And this is part of a series we're doing since George is in parts unknown and has basically... He did a show, like he produced a show before he left, and then I was on my own for this one. We're doing a listener project show, and basically Smitty was nice enough to reach out and give an incredible explanation of a really cool project, and so here we are.
Yeah. If you guys aren't listening to Ham Radio 360 and you're interested in ham radio, I highly recommend it. It's one of the few podcasts I listen to, especially the Workbench aspect of it. Now, I'm more technical than your average bear, so there's a lot of things that they cover that I kind of already know, but there are a lot of things that they cover that I don't know, and a lot of it is just honest, kind of unscripted. They've got an outline but not a script. It's just kind of honest talking about techie nerdy things and the tools they use and what they do and the kinds of things that they know and they don't know. And both of you are very good at explaining things. I learned a lot from you, Jeremy. Thank you, about 3D printers. I have since selected a 3D printer, and I've got one over there now. And I learned a lot from George about a lot of the tech stuff that he does. Actually, I have a burning question for you.
Sure.
And feel free to not respond honestly if you don't want to. But you play a very good Simplicido to his Play-Doh. I think I'm getting those names right. I.e., you ask a lot of really good questions that lead him to the next answers, and I can't tell whether you're playing dumb or whether you are actually not that you're actually dumb, but that you actually don't know the material, right? Like, have you intentionally held back from learning things so that you can ask these questions on the show? Your questions sound informed, like you are intentionally leading him to an answer, and I'm curious whether that is feigned ignorance on the show or whether that is genuine ignorance on the show.
So that's a fantastic question. Couple episodes ago, for those of you who are Harry Potter fans, I told George, I said, you are a wizard and I am a squib. And a squib was somebody who had a little bit of magical aptitude, but did not have like the natural talent and had to get a lot of help in order to be able to cast spells. And really what it comes down to, I work in a technical profession. However, very quickly in my career in IT, I found out I was a much better project manager and then manager and thought leader than I was an actual like developer. For instance, when I was young, I really struggled picking up programming languages, not because I don't understand concepts like, I understand object-oriented design. I understand some of the things that frustrate students like pointers and things like that. But when it literally came to the syntax and grammar of the language, I really struggled. And also when it came to problem solving, especially 15 years ago when you didn't have a ton of patterns, it's the curse of having too many choices, and I getting really frustrated that I might choose the wrong one and have to go back. And of course, when I was younger, I didn't take it into account that that's how you learn, is by making wrong decisions. And at this point in my career, I have a very much a fail fast, fail forward approach. So with the stuff when it comes to the Workbench, which the majority of our content thus far has really kind of been around, I'll say, modern makery topics. So things like Arduinos, Raspberry Pis. I've played with all of this stuff. I am conversant. When it comes to analog electronics, I have been completely stymied. Like the greatest thing I ever bought myself was an oscilloscope. And it's mainly because I've read millions of books and all the Forrest Mims stuff. And as a kid would spend hours in Radio Shack buying things and ultimately would just get frustrated. And my learning style is such that like I really have to see the thing come together to really understand it. So when we're talking about stuff, I may understand core concepts, but I may not understand the application of them. I mean, some of the stuff that we talked about, I absolutely do know, but a lot of it is really like I've learned enough to understand how to put the pieces together, but I may not know the actual implementation details. And so because of this approach, I actually, George and I became very good foils for one another in order to lead our listeners through, because I generally play the role of the person listening who doesn't understand the stuff to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And unlike the one 3D printer episode where I got to be the expert for once.
Yeah. You guys swapped roles. I loved it. It worked out really good. It worked out really well. I liked it.
The other thing is George has been in the industry for his entire career.
Yeah,
and
he's old is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, that's why we always joke that his original call sign was A.
Hold on for 1 second. What's that, Zoe? Is it our cat who's fighting in the backyard? Oh. Hang on for 1 second. I got to go deal with something. I'm just going to let the stream go. You can chat with the chat room if you want.
All right.
I got something I need to go take care of. I'll be right back.
Chat room ask questions. Although I guess actually the answer to this question, yes. On a lot of things I am dumb. But part of it is, especially now that I have two small kids, I've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. When we first moved to Cincinnati, my wife wasn't working, so I had a lot more time to work on projects, work on my YouTube channel, which actually I have a YouTube channel also under the look for KF7IJZ. And most of the content on there has been around solar, like portable solar stuff and battery technology. I have a pretty decent background in portable like DC power systems, like 5 and 12 volt. Um, but a lot of the stuff I just started getting into. I started filming all the time. Like I have a couple woodworking videos on there as I was exploring, which are really good studies in how not to finish wood. um, I can still see you, Kenneth. But yeah, so sometimes I'm dumb. If you're asking me what experience I have had in cybersecurity, um, like I personally have a lot of interest in cybersecurity. So right now, what I'm doing is for the 5 years before I came to Cincinnati, I was a consultant in Washington, D.C., and I helped transform a lot of programs for a lot of agencies into adopting Agile. I got to do a lot of groundbreaking work on Agile acquisition, and then how do you tie things like security and other non-functional requirements into a fully operationalized development program, which is often difficult because for federal government contracts, you often have many companies doing individual roles because they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. So on the cybersecurity front, I've actually done a fair amount of like FISMA and DIACAP like compliance work. At the company I work for now, I helped introduce people to concepts of like secure coding. I have a lot of personal interest in cybersecurity, and it's actually something that I've been considering trying to start steering my career towards here lately, because I've pretty much have run through all the things I can do with Agile. Um, and I'm kind of starting to lose interest in that. Ooh, I just got pinged.
Yeah,
What
for
did I
me.
get pinged on? Were you telling me to shut up?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I'm responding to this, but we'll talk about it after the show.
Oh, you're kidding me. You weren't streaming my show or my audio?
No, we are streaming your audio.
Oh, that was from earlier. Oh, sorry, I'm scrolling.
Yeah. No, look at the one that started at 9:00.
I just scrolling is fundamental, much like reading.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my area is becoming huge. Are you going to make cyber great again?
Oh God.
I have a very good friend named Jay Virgil that I worked with when I was in DC, and his entire career had been spent as a beltway contractor, and that was one of his biggest complaints. He's like, "What is cyber? Why do we keep talking about cyber?"
At my employer, we have a new VP of InfoSec, and he came from the government sector, and he held like on his second day at the company, so he hadn't really had a chance to get a feel for what it's like to be back in the private sector. But he gave a presentation to the whole information security organization, and we had like because I'm in California and my company's mothership is up in Seattle, so I was watching the remote stream. And we've got offices all over the place. And so we're sitting there in IRC with like the cyber count, right? There, I don't drink. I'm a teetotaler, but other people were like taking shots whenever he would say cyber. We had some very drunk people on the team, right, for that day. I think he made it up to like 12 or 13 in his 20-minute spiel.
I mean, that's what it's all about. That's
hilarious.
What's in the magazines. That's what that, you say cyber, and it's like if you sell services like catering services or table rental services, you add the word wedding to it and everything's 10 times the price. Well, Same thing with cyber.
Yep.
Cyber is a very expensive word.
So Kenneth asked a question in the chat room that I think I also am waiting for, although, confession, I don't subscribe to you on YouTube, so I might be waiting for the wrong reasons. He says he's still waiting for the PCB trace blowing up videos. Do you have those to post?
Oh, it's posted.
Well, there you go, Kenneth.
Nothing blew up, though. So actually,
obviously you're doing it wrong.
So a little bit of background is, so you mentioned talking about charge controllers, which I actually had a note I wanted to talk to you about. So on the podcast, we did an open source hardware project. There's a gentleman named Barrick Dunn, K6BEZ, who is behind the scenes
At the office.
has had a very illustrious career in RF test equipment, design and engineering. And his goal with the project that I think he did 3 or 4 years ago, and it was originally based on a PIC microcontroller. It was really more focused around, how can people get decent test equipment for not much money and learn something in the process. So he and George are good friends. George put together a PCB and Eagle, which is Eagle is a sponsor of our podcast. Actually, they kind of helped kickstart it starting because they'd approached George, and he's like, well, why don't we do a podcast? So they were kind of a catalyst in the beginning. So we put together this board, and based on Barrick's design, some modifications were made. An MVP firmware for the Arduino was created, and it's been wildly successful. Like we thought we would sell 100 of them. At this point, we've sold about 500. And honestly, the biggest issue is the design uses some glass germanium diodes, which are, the only way to find them is new old stock. And our initial supply of them has dried up. Kale just ordered a bunch from Greece. He found a cache over there.
Nice.
So we're going to have those again soon. But I mean, for $50, you're able to basically buy build an HF standing wave ratio meter, and the opportunity to learn some stuff in the process. And the community, this is another thing that's been humbling because it's an open source project. All the firmware, the board design, everything has been taken and run with. And we've had folks go in and build a completely useful operating system's the wrong word, but completely rewrite the firmware to add way more features and functions that were already in there and make it a lot less frustrating to use, which again, we shipped MVP.
Yeah.
We've had people starting to look at using different synthesis chips to increase the number of bands it covers. So up into VHF, maybe UHF. I have another interview scheduled on Sunday with a listener who replaced our little 2x16 LCD with like a 2.5-inch OLED displays, who actually will plot the curves and whatnot. And that's actually been humbling to see the interest and the engagement from the community on it. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, holy crap, we just ran a successful open source project.
And you've got more coming.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing me. I have a tendency to tell stories a lot. So number two, because I have a lot of interest and background with portable 12-volt systems for radio operating, I've had a device in my head I've wanted to build for years. I started talking to George about it, and it started off as a low-voltage disconnect with an Arduino that would be able to track like min-max average voltage, give you real-time displays of voltage current, min-max average current, calculating amp hours, and then it was going to have a programmable low voltage disconnect for either lead-based batteries or lithium-based batteries. And I said, that's not enough. I really want to see,
more features.
That's right. I had two products in mind. One was going to be a QRP thing, which would have basically been the battery monitor, a low voltage disconnect, and a solar charge controller, say a 2 amp or 3 amp solar charge controller built into it. And then the other was going to be more of a shack accessory, where it basically was low voltage disconnect, power monitor, and then power gate type functionality, which is like what you were talking about earlier. If one power source fails, then it would automatically switch over to the other.
Yeah, talk to me after the show. Well, I've got some design ideas of what I want to do on something like that. But I want to take this opportunity, excuse me for interrupting, I want to take this opportunity. Kenneth, so you mentioned that you weren't able to blow up the boards, that they were able to handle as much current as you could throw at it. Kenneth has offered very, very graciously, he has a 130 amp benchtop power supply. And the voltage across your power device isn't going, or the gate, the kit that you guys are making, isn't going to affect the current going through it. So you could drop it down to half a volt or a volt or whatever, which will lower the total amount of power being sent through that your programmable load has to dissipate, but you still get the same amount of current going through it. So you could greatly increase the amount of current that it is passing for your tests.
I'm guessing, yeah, because I think I don't remember what that. It might be 40. No, actually, sorry. For my programmable load, 30 amps is the limit.
Okay, so it does have a current limit as well as a power limit.
Yeah, it's a 300 watt unit, and the max current is 30 amps. But of course, 12 volts, you hit that a little bit earlier. I have boards sitting here on the desk. If you were just dying to blow one up and you have a programmable load that can go way high, um, that has more, I would love to see one of these things get smoked. Because
Kenneth?
ultimately we decided we're going to probably use 3-ounce copper for the devices just to
Okay.
be like totally
Yeah.
safe.
Well, and
I
it
mean,
lowers your impedance, right? You're going to have less of a voltage drop across anyway. Even if
yes,
even if you're not at risk of blowing up, you are going to have a voltage drop.
yes. Although these traces are pretty wide and relatively short, so I mean, it's nominal. But
Yeah.
no, that would actually be awesome, especially if you shot a video.
You hear that, Kenneth? It's on you now.
Yeah, just DM me on Twitter, and well, actually, you can email me. I think it's Jeremy at hamradio360.com, and we'll exchange addresses. I'll get one out to you.
Cool beans. All right. Well, as much as I would love to sit here and tell stories all night, I think we should probably start on the show because it is
Get to the meat.
bloody late for you, and I don't want to keep you up
Yes.
any later than we already have.
Although I'm having more fun than I've had any time this week. But yes, let's get started.
Okay.
All right. In 3, 2. I am talking to Smitty, Kilo Romeo 6 Zulu Yankee. Yes, that spells crazy. Smitty reached out to us after our call to action for their listener projects to talk about something that I am calling the biggest whisper.
That's
evening,
not awkward at all. Hi, I'm Smitty, KR6ZY, like you said, crazy with a 6 in the middle. And yeah, I've been pretty active in Whisper for at least a few years now, and I would love to chat with you about it.
So before we get into your project, give us a little bit of a background of your operating style. Like, what do you enjoy to do with ham radio?
Well, that's always the question, isn't it? Everyone asks you, oh, you're a ham radio operator. What do you do with ham radio? And my answer to that question is that I'm generally not one for small talk with people that I don't know. And that's one of the things that I think turns a lot of people off on ham radio is well, I've got to go talk to people. I don't want to talk to people. I don't know these people. Why would I want to talk to these people? Well, you don't have to talk to people. There are a lot of things that you can do in ham radio that use the technology that, benefit the community that are not rag chewing or Aries communication or whatever. And one of them, there are many of them, but one of them is called Whisper, which stands for the Weak Signal Propagation Reporting. I'm sorry, did we want to dive directly into the technical?
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, okay, keep going. So Whisper is weak signal propagation reporting. It was made by or created by a guy named Joe Taylor, who is the JT of JT65 and JT9, the very common low power modes that are used a lot on HF and satellite work and various things like that. Whisper is an automated protocol. You get your gear set up and you don't have to talk to anyone. It just does all the work for you. And what it's doing is it's beaconing every so often. In my case, I have it beaconing for 10 minutes out of every 20. But it sends out a message and then optionally can sit there and listen for a message. And you have all of these beacons all over the place transmitting these little short packets that have your call sign and your grid square and how much power you're putting out. And that's basically it. It's only a few bytes of information, but it's spread out over a 2-minute period. And with the magic that Joe has been able to come up with, Dr. Taylor, a very weak signal can be received in a very distant station. And so the weak signal propagation reporting, the weak signal part of it is that it has a very low signal to noise ratio requirement. That is to say, it can receive a signal down in the noise. And consequently, you have these very small, low power beacons that can, I have one that's only about 180 milliwatts that can be heard literally all around the world.
Yeah, actually, I've heard before that you can actually receive whisper signals below the noise floor.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And another thing that's interesting about it is, you mentioned that it's a 2-minute transition, but one of the things that it relies on is relatively synchronized timing. In other words, your computer's clock, if you're doing this from a desktop, because there is a Windows app that you can hook up to your radio to do this, crank the power down, but your computer does need to be synchronized to an NTP time server in order to make sure that you're transmitting and receiving as happening in synchronization, because it kind of is a distributed network in that way.
Yeah, excuse me. So yes, time synchronization is very important. The message starts. Everyone starts transmitting at the same time, which is 1 minute after the top of the. I'm sorry, 1 second after the top of the 2 minutes. So, like right now, it is 9:19 and 30 seconds. So at 9:20 and 1 second, everyone's going to start transmitting at the same time. The advantage to this is the receiver knows when it should be looking for those signals. You don't have to guess where the beginning of the message is and where the end of a message is. You know exactly where it's going to be, and that makes it a lot easier to try and find something. It is easier to tell whether there is a signal there that you know what it should look like. You just need to find out whether it's there or not. It's a lot easier to tell that than it is to tell, like, well, I think there might be a signal here or there might be a signal over there, but I'm not sure, and it may have started already or it may have just ended, and I can't tell because of fade and blah, 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 right? If you know what it is you're looking for, it's a lot easier to be able to find it.
So, out of curiosity, what is the effective data rate of the mode?
It is, I believe, 1 bit every 1.6 seconds. So it is a fractional baud. Yes, it is a fractional baud. It is the inverse of the no, I'm sorry. It's the other way around because it changes a little bit more often than once a second. So I believe it's 1.6 baud.
Okay. So this is one of those other things that I've never understood. And I'm sure it's a physics question and not directly related to your project, but it seems like everybody always says that the wider or the more data that you want to transmit, the higher signal to noise ratio you have to have, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this takes advantage of that. It's a known structured, message that's being sent back and forth on a known time pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have assumed mankind could somehow, especially when you look at how cell phone spectrum is used, kind of gotten over that limitation of the higher the bandwidth, therefore, or the higher the speed, therefore the higher the bandwidth.
So Dr. Nyquist disagrees with you.
And he's smarter than I am.
Yeah, he's a lot smarter than me too. So the way I think of it, and I don't know if this is an accurate way of thinking of it, but the transition from one state to another is not a simple, like if you're transmitting on one frequency and then you move just a little bit to the frequency next to it, that transition, think of it like a square wave, right? When you have the transition of a square wave, that is a whole lot of harmonics, right? To make a square wave, you're not at 1 kilohertz. You're not just putting out a 1 kilohertz signal. You're putting out a 1 kilohertz signal and a 3 kilohertz signal and a 5 kilohertz signal and a 7 kilohertz signal and so on and so forth, right? You've got all of those odd harmonics in there that you have to do to make it a nice sharp corner. So that's a huge bandwidth. You don't want to do that sort of bandwidth. So they end up shaping the signal down to something, mumble, hands, math. I don't know exactly what the signal looks like, but they get rid of all of those harmonics, which end up making it look very different. And when you do that, you've narrowed the bandwidth, but you can't transition as fast. You can't transition from one state to the next. And so that inherently limits how quickly you can change from one state to the next. The faster you change from one state to the next, the more bandwidth it consumes because of all of those harmonics. That's the way I think about it in my head. Whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. An RF engineer will be able to tell you better, but that is at least a mnemonic that has made it easier for me to understand the kind of the inverse property between bandwidth in the RF sense and bandwidth in the data sense.
See, I just learned something. Therefore, this has already been successful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So, you in the project that you have been describing as we've been trading emails, you don't just have, a signal link or something or an audio cable hooked up to the back of a Yaesu FT857 and running at 5 watts. You have actually, engaged in one of these QRP Labs kits that George and I have talked about in a previous episode, which he has ordered but not yet gotten to assemble.
Okay.
Can you kind of talk about what your setup looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I got to remember that your podcast is audio only. So Hans Zimmer, no, he's the movie maker.
He's the composer.
Yeah, composer. Hans Summers, I believe, is the guy who runs QRP Labs. He designed this kit many years ago and has been improving it over the years. It's called the Ultimate 3 now. The version he's selling right now is the Ultimate 3S. which I believe is very similar to the Ultimate 3 that I have, but it uses a different signal generator. I don't remember the exact numbers of which one it uses. But in short, it's a little, it's an Atmel. It's not an Arduino, if I remember correctly. He did not use the Arduino bootloader, but it's an Atmel with a small display on it, a little 16 by 2 character display, and it controls a signal generator like the SI5351, but it's not that one. I think it's the AD9870, whatever, that one. I don't remember the numbers. But it's using that signal generator to output a signal. And then the Arduino controls that signal. The way Whisper works is what's called MFK. So MFSK, there we go. Something frequency shift keying. I can't remember what the M stands for. Kenneth is probably cringing in the chat room right now. But the basically it is frequency shift keying is what the FSK stands for, and the M just means that the output wave is contiguous and it doesn't have any big jumps in it. Anyway, the FSK. So you're outputting a single frequency, and then you shift to a different frequency, and then you shift to a different frequency, and you keep going like that. And it's the shifts in frequency that contain the information. And there are 4 different tones that a Whisper station will output, and they are 1.6 hertz apart. And 1.6 hertz is very difficult to hear with the human ear. So if you tune to a Whisper station, it just sounds like a continuous tone, especially if you tune to it up at the higher frequency ranges of your audio. Like if you put it up at a kilohertz or something, you won't hear a change of 1.6 hertz. If you put it down around like 200 hertz or 300 hertz down at the lower end, you'll have a better chance of hearing the change. But it's a very, very, very small change in frequency. And that is something that is very easy to control these signal generators to do. And so Hans just made this little simple, dedicated, embedded device, microcontroller, signal generator, and some low-pass filters, because these signal generators put out square waves. So we were talking about all the harmonics that a square wave puts out. The low-pass filter is there to get rid of all of those harmonics, and so you end up with just the fundamental frequency.
So does the base kit, is it frequency agile? In other words, you could put it on any band, or when you buy this thing, are you kind of buying it for a single band?
So the kit itself, the transmitter itself, is frequency agile, but it does need that low-pass filter, and those low-pass filters are frequency specific. When you buy the kit, you specify which low-pass filter you want to come with it. It has space for one low-pass filter on the primary board, and you can choose any of the low-pass filters. I think they make them 160 meters up through 6 at least. I think they might also have a 2-meter kit, but everything in between. However, they do make a add-on that is a relay board that will give you space for 5 additional low-pass filters, and the microcontroller will switch the relays so that if you're transmitting on 20 meters, it will use the 20-meter low-pass filter. And on my kit, I actually have 5 low-pass filters in there. I've got 80, 40, 30, 20, and 10 meters.
So you have, and obviously the board knows to kind of, like you said, cycle through the different bands. I'm assuming that it probably does 1 band per transmit receive segment.
Correct. So the protocol is that you transmit for 2 minutes. It's actually just shy of 2 minutes. I think it's like a minute 53, and there are a few seconds of downtime between each transmissions. But you transmit, you transmit for a 2-minute period. We can't really do full duplex on HF, so you're either transmitting or receiving at any given time. You can program the U3 for whatever transmits pattern you want. I have mine programmed so that transmits on 80 meters for 2 minutes, then 40, then 30, then 20, then 10. And so that's a 10-minute period, right? 2 minutes for each of the 5 bands. And then it goes silent for 10 minutes. And during those silent 10 minutes where it's not transmitting, I've actually rigged up a transmit-receive switch to my antenna. So whenever the U3 is transmitting, whenever it has the PTT keyed down, it switches the relay and connects the antenna to it. But whenever it's not transmitting, the relay connects the antenna to an output port on the back of the box that the U3 is in. And then I have that antenna, or that cable, running over to my Red Pitaya. Red Pitaya is a test box. It's a It's some ARM processor. I can't remember which one, but it's got an FPGA on it, an incredibly powerful FPGA with a bunch of D to A's and A to D's on it, and it's got 4 SMA ports on the edge, 2 to receive and 2 transmit. And a guy named Pavel, I can't remember his call sign, a guy named Pavel wrote the software and the FPGA software. The Red Pitaya is capable of sampling, I think it's 60 megasamples per second, or it might be higher than that. Regardless, it's able to receive the entire HF spectrum concurrently from DC up to at least 30 megahertz. I think it actually goes higher than that. But that's a lot of data. And so he wrote the FPGA code that takes that entire sample of the entire HF spectrum and does the heavy lifting of the math to pull out the whisper spectrums, just the little tiny slivers of spectrum. The whisper is dedicated to a 200 hertz section of the band. Only 200 hertz of each of these bands is dedicated to whisper. And so it pulls out that little tiny section and does all the heavy lifting and can receive whisper signals on 8 bands concurrently.
Wow.
It's really, really, really cool. And so you plug your antenna into this thing, and if you have a better noise floor than I do, my noise floor is rubbish here at the house. I've just got so much noise in my neighborhood, so I can't hear nearly as many stations as a lot of other whisper receivers can. But if you do look at the record of KR6ZY on whisper, you will see multiple bands being received at the same time, and that's because of the Red Pitaya. It's really cool.
So that's that's pretty amazing. Now, the Red Pitaya is a standalone board, but it has to be interfaced with a computer, right?
No, it is a full-fledged Linux box on its own right. All it needs is an Ethernet connection.
I never realized that.
Yeah, it's got an ARM processor. It runs, I don't know if it's literally Raspbian, but it's a distribution very similar to Raspbian. But Pavel released his Whisper code as a full OS image. So you just burn it to a SD card, just like you do on a Raspberry Pi, stick it in there. You go in and edit a few files on there to put your call sign and your grid square and tell it which bands you want it to receive on, because it can only do 8 bands at a time, and there are more than 8 HF bands. But yeah, you just configure it and hook it up to your network and forget about it.
And it's set it and forget it.
Yeah.
So, one of the critical things we mentioned earlier, though, is timing. So obviously both the transmitter and the receiver have to have a very good understanding of precise timing. So how do you address that?
So the Red Pitaya, because it's a full-fledged Linux box, it does use NTP. And it's, there are public NTP clouds out there that you can, oh God, did I just use the word cloud? There are public NTP pools, that's the word I was looking for, that you can use, and they are certainly good enough. You need to be accurate to within a few hundred milliseconds, I think. And NTP will get you down to a few milliseconds, ones of milliseconds, not hundreds of milliseconds. So NTP is perfectly fine. The U3, however, does not have an IP stack. It can't talk NTP to anything. So it needs to get its timing from a GPS. There might be other ways of getting timing in there. I can't remember what they are, but I have a GPS hooked up to mine.
Does the board offer like an RTC module? Like at all? Like it's something that if you could sync it once, that it's going to be good enough, or does it pretty much need?
It's a good question. I don't remember seeing an RTC module from Hans. You can get them for $5 on eBay, right? Was a DS3231, I think it is. And those are pretty darn accurate and precise. Certainly good enough for this purposes, but I don't think Hans's code knows how to deal with that. I could be wrong on that.
Okay. And you are right. It's not the Arduino bootloader. If you want to upgrade the firmware, you actually have to kind of go through setting the pins in the right, I don't know what to call that, the right mode. And there might be soldering a jumper involved in order to get it to go into right mode. But
no, it's the ICSP pins are exposed externally. So if you've got an ICSP, which is the in-circuit system programmer, if you can program AVRs natively, and their ICSPs are easy to get a hold of, they're cheap, you can buy them online. You can also turn an Arduino into an ICSP. So as long as you can get, I think it's 6 pins, like those little DuPont jumper wires, onto pins on the U3, you can get it reprogrammed. It's just not the Arduino bootloader, so you do need to actually go through. In Linux, the tool is called AVR Dude. I don't know what. I think AVR Dude is available on other platforms as well.
Well, that is pretty cool. So what was it that got you interested in this project? I mean, because one of the things is that, again, weak signal propagation reporter, this thing is actually very helpful to the ham community for being able to kind of get a real-time view of what propagation is actually doing, and can help predict a little bit about what your signal may do. But what got you on board with this project?
So honestly, well, like I was talking at the top of the show, I'm really interested in ham radio. I love the technology. I love building things, which is one of the reasons why I like your podcast so much. But I'm not a huge fan of making small talk with people that I don't know. And I tune around on the HF bands, and there, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on HF. There's a lot of digital modes. There's a lot of DXing, contesting. Those kinds of things are fun. But there's also a lot of rag chewers who kind of feel like the band is theirs, and I don't know. It's kind of off-putting sometimes. And I think
yes,
I was
very much so.
Yeah, it can be. I don't want to discourage people who are interested in ham radio, and rag chewing is a perfectly valid method of using it, as long as you're not, pissing off other people. Anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I was looking for something new to do, and honestly, I was also looking for kits to build. I was looking around for things that I could solder and build and learn from, and have something that worked, right? At the time, QRP kits existed, but they were either really expensive or really crappy. That is finally changing. I'm really happy with what Farhan is doing with the BitX40. But I think that's a whole different episode. I'd love to talk to you about that as well.
Have you built one?
I have. I've got one of the original analog-only versions, and I just received the digital version. I just bought a second one that I haven't had a chance to do anything with yet.
Yeah, so George had actually mentioned Farhan in one of our earlier episodes, and I've, since I became aware of the BitX, I started seeing things pop up around, and I've seen a lot of people make a lot of modifications to himself to both make it quieter, a little bit more sensitive,
more stable,
more stable, moving it to direct digital synthesis for the clock generation. So, I mean, it's really taken on a life of its own. I noticed that Randy K7IJZ had actually started a tracker similar to the Ellicraft tracker.
Yeah.
Because I guess shipments are starting to get constrained as this thing gets more and more popular.
Yeah, actually, I saw Randy tweeting about, have you received your BitX40? Come tell me when. And I almost went to it, but I realized I didn't have the date of when I ordered it and when they said it shipped or when I received it. I didn't have any of the dates he was asking for, so I intend to get back to that. Randy, if you're watching this, I promise I'll get back to you on that, but I do want to give you my data. It is a really cool kit. Well, I don't want to distract from this because we're talking about Whisper today, but we'll do another episode talking about the BitX. It is really cool.
Awesome. So just one point of fact, as you were talking about this, I went and looked at the QRP Lab site. And what's interesting is that there are now bandpass, I guess bandpass filter is the right word. Yes. He now has bandpass filters available for 600 meters and 2200 meters. So some what's that, ELF or VLF?
LF at the very least, yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I complain about this on my stream a lot, but I've got an AM broadcast station putting out 100,000 watts about a mile that way. So the low frequencies around here are pretty much useless for me. all of the things. One of the things that I haven't actually shown you yet, but I have to put high pass filters on all of my QRP signals, including the Whisper stuff, and I have to roll off 2 megahertz and below for pretty much everything I do, because otherwise it'll just blow out the front end of anything that doesn't have good pre-selection.
So what are you using for those filters?
For the high pass?
Yes.
I make them myself. So actually, let's see here. Again, I got to remember that your listeners don't have a video of this, but the first one I made was actually on a little bit of proto board. I've just got some of the formed green inductors that look like resistors but are really inductors, and some ceramic disc caps. I just went online, found a high pass filter calculator, found out what component values I needed, pulled them off my shelf, and put them on a little board with a couple of SMA connectors. And that was the first high-pass filter I made, and it worked a champ, blocking out the AM broadcast station real close to my house. I then went and tried to lay out a board, not tried to, but did lay out a board. These are available on my shop. It makes it sound like I'm making money off of it. If you go to my profile on Oshpark, OSHPARK.com, I'm Smitty Halibut there, SMITTYHALIBUT. I've got a lot of high pass and low pass and band pass filter board designs that I've made. So yeah, I've got those. Then it's just a matter of selecting which frequency you want to use, or what frequencies you want to cut off at, and selecting the right values. There are calculators online for all of that. You get the components, you solder them in, and you're off to the races.
So one of the things I've always wondered about that is, you commented that you have it's 100 kilowatts a mile away. Do you have to take into consideration the power output of the station when you're building the filter?
Not as far away as I am. The way I found out that AM broadcast station was causing a problem is when I had my antenna tuner hooked up to an outside antenna, and I was trying to tune my antenna, and it looked like there was a loose connection because the needle kept wiggling around and pulsating. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? I was like shaking things and trying to find a loose connection and reseating cables, and I couldn't find it for the life of me. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I noticed at one point that the needle started pulsing rhythmically. And I realized that it looked like music. It looked like a VU meter for music. So the energy from the AM station coming into my antenna, down my feed line, into the antenna analyzer, made it look like reflected power. And so it was reading an incorrect SWR because of the power, the variable power, because it's AM, amplitude modulation. The variable amount of power coming down my antenna wire into my antenna analyzer made it look like the reflectivity of my antenna was going up and down, and it made the needle go back and forth. And once I'd realized that it looked like music that was coming in, it looked like a VU meter, I tuned around and found 890 kilohertz like a mile wide on my receiver when I tuned it and hooked up I eventually hooked up like an SDR to get a spectrum scope, and it's, you can see all these little AM stations and then this huge one at 890, and I think there's a slightly smaller one at 1280. I can't remember exactly where 1280 is, whether it's the same towers or somewhere else in town, but just these two AM broadcast stations that are absolutely overpowering everything else I listen to.
Wow. But an interesting lesson in in what AM broadcast stations can do.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just as an aside, an article came across my feed this week that here in Cincinnati we have WLW 700, and at one point in the world it was the most powerful AM station in the world at half a megawatt.
500 kilowatts.
500 kilowatts.
Wow.
They had to turn it down. I think it's at 50,000 now, but there was a time when it was the loudest AM radio station on the planet.
That is amazing. I would hate to have been a ham in that area.
Yeah, and up that way where that tower is, also, there's a big history of Voice of America in this area as well. So that was, I don't know, it's a cool little piece of history. That's actually something we need to do on the podcast, is get somebody in to talk about the history of ham radio and how we almost lost it completely after World War II due to the something admiral of the Navy thought that all wireless communication should be a military-only asset.
Those damn commies. Sorry.
But no, you're fine. So the receiver you've got running, you've got the transmitter running. How long have you had this thing running?
A few years at least. I don't remember exactly when I turned it all on. Actually, for the first year or so, before I found out about the Red Pattaya, I had a what was it? A soft rock. It was one of the original kind of SDR kits.
Yeah, it would have been a soft rock or maybe a Fun Cube.
Oh no, it was definitely a soft rock. I think it was the Soft Rock RX. It was frequency agile. It could do a lot of different bands. It had 4 different pre-selection input filters, but it was a USB controlled SDR that output a IQ, stereo audio feed into a computer. So it did not have a built-in signal processing. All it did was a digital conversion of RF down to an I and Q baseband signal, and so I had to run that into a Raspberry Pi. And luckily, my home server is a Raspberry Pi. It does my routing and everything. And so I hooked that up to my Pi, and I was running the Whisper software. And the Whisper software, the one that Joel wrote, knows how to decode an IQ signal coming from a DSP or from a SDR. And so that's what I was using on the receive side for many years, and then not many years, but for a long time. And the U3 was my transmitter. And then I switched from, when I found out about the Red Pitaya, I just got rid of I pulled the soft rock out of the system, more CPU cycles back to my routing and other things that the Raspberry Pi is doing for me. And the Red Pitaya became the dedicated Whisper receiver.
So what intended for, I guess, transmit and receive, what do you have it hooked up to?
So I started out with a fan dipole. Well, actually, when I originally started out, it was a 80 meter only and 40 meter only, so only 2-band fan dipole. I live more space than most city dwellers have, but not a huge lot. I can't put up ginormous antennas. It's about 120 feet front to back, and I think only about like 45 or 50, maybe 60 feet wide. So my lot is big enough to put up an 80 meter antenna, but only just. It pretty much goes from the front to the back, and I kind of have to like dogleg it at an angle to make it fit. But it's not very high. It's only about 20 feet off the ground, so it's basically an NVIS antenna at that point, the near vertical incident, which means that all of the energy is going straight up in the air. But it was the only 80 meter and 40 meter antenna I had for a long time. When I did Whisper, I wanted to add 30 meters because most of the Whisper activity happens on 30 meters. 30 meters is kind of a magic band. It's above most of the noise floor that happens on 80 and 40 meters, but it is below 20 meters, which usually closes off at night. So 30 meters is kind of in this magic sweet spot of lower noise than the bands that are open all the time, but it's open a lot more than the other low noise bands. And so that's where a lot of like APRS happens, Whisper happens there. It's also a digital only mode, or rather no voice band. You can do Morse code and digital modes there. Cool. So I wanted to add 30 meters to this antenna. And while I was up there adding 30 meters to this antenna, I just went ahead and added 20 and 10 as well. So that was the antenna that I used for a long time. More recently, though, for a project I'm doing with my ham club at work, I am designing some 9-to-1 Ballons because there aren't enough 9-to-1 Ballon designs out there. Obviously, I need to make more. And
have you heard of the Pactena?
The Pactena, I've heard a little bit about it. Yeah.
That's George and Nick's antenna. It's a very nice 9-to-1 Ballon.
It is a very nice 9-to-1 Ballon, but it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to sell that as a kit to make some money for the club. So it's something I'm doing. I'm also using it as an opportunity to learn how to measure Ballons and other things. And anyway, yet another episode I'd love to talk to you about. But short version is I have a long wire strung up around the yard now. I got 20-foot sections of 2x4s at the corner of the yard with some pulleys at the top that I strung an antenna around. The reason I'm not broadcasting on Whisper right now is because California just had some really gnarly rains last week on Friday and some really bad windstorms. And so I went out there and took the antenna down, and I haven't had a chance to put it back up yet.
I would say I actually just looked you up and saw that it was silent.
Yeah, like I said, windstorm.
So a question that I had, because you seem pretty familiar with the QRP Labs products, is I noticed they have a receiver board.
Yeah, that was a product. It was one that he was working on when I was building my U3. It wasn't available yet. I don't have one. I haven't received it. I haven't ordered one. I haven't actually even looked at it yet. I don't know if it's a full-on receiver, if it's a IQ SDR, or I don't know how much of the signal chain it includes.
Yeah, it kind of reads like it is basically just gets you to I and Q, and then I think you take it in through a sound card maybe.
Yeah.
But it would have been cool if it had, obviously, like you said, there's no IP stack or I mean, even IP connectivity on the base module. But who knows? Maybe if he makes a version 4, it certainly would not be hard to do that.
Well, I don't know that I'd go that far. IP is not an easy thing to put in an atmel, right?
Well, it is if you I mean, like the YSED chipsets, or communicating with an ESP board, or the other, I forget what atmels. I've got
This
an
like the
Arduino
SAM
Maker
21s.
1000. Yeah, like the SAMD 21s, and the I forget, something 1500 is the chipset on it. But I have an Arduino that if I go to a URL, I can make the LED blink, which was a big accomplishment for me.
Yeah, the Internet of Things.
Yes.
Things.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't have an echo effect on my board here.
That's you did good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know about that receiver specifically. Once I put the red Pataya on there, I kind of stopped fiddling with the hardware. It was kind of at peak Whisper dedicated station for me, right? Like I got the U3 that's beaconing on its own. It's hooked up to GPS, so I don't have to mess with the time on it. I've got the TR switch, which means the antenna gets shared between the beacon and the receiver, and the red Pataya is receiving 8 bands concurrently. I don't really know where else I can go from that. I think Hans's kit is great because it will integrate more tightly with the U3. I haven't, like I said, I haven't looked at it, but I assume it's yet another board to add to the sandwich of the stack of boards that his kits usually take. And he does great work. I mean, I've been super impressed with everything he's done, and his response to supporting people and making sure that their stuff works and helping them out when it doesn't and all that crap. He's been great.
So if I'm somebody who is at home and I've never heard of Whisper before, or I have an interest in it, maybe I've played around, I've run the application on my Windows PC for a couple hours or something. Can you give any guidance for, I as a ham listening, what is the practical application for me to go and look at this data? I said earlier that it can help, kind of predict propagation. But is that an oversimplification of things?
Yeah. So the always question of what's the application of this? Well, that's one of the things about ham radio. It's right. Why do we do it? Well, because it's there is part of it. But no, in reality, Whisper, it generates a lot of data that people can use to go look at the propagations right now. The more transmitters and the more receivers we have, the better of a model that you will have about what propagation is doing right now, who you can talk to. And if you have a Whisper station at your shack, it doesn't matter what other people can talk to. It's a matter of what you can talk to, right? And so by putting up a Whisper station at your shack, you know what the bands look like to your antenna at that moment. I don't use it for that a whole lot. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Because like I said, I don't get on the HF bands much and just sit down and chat with people, but it's there. And for people who do that sort of thing, I mean, it could be a very good indicator. If you know that there's a particular part of the world that you want to be able to talk to, and you're waiting for the bands to open up to that. And if that part of the world has a Whisper station, you could, in theory, set up something that says, hey, whenever my station hears that other station, or vice versa, then send me an alert. I don't know if something like that automatically already exists, but that's the kind of thing that the data that Whisper is generating would enable.
You mentioned that, and I'll never be able to find it, but I actually seem to recall, I think there was somebody who wrote a script that would run on a Raspberry Pi, and because there was I forget the gentleman's name, might have been Zoltan, had created a little 20 milliwatt thing that plugs on top on top of a Raspberry Pi. There was a 20-meter Whisper radio. But I seem to recall somebody did write a script that would notify you for if things happened. Kind of going back to the propagation prediction. So I'm looking at the map right now. For instance, there is a station in South Africa. Their transmit level is 20 dBm, which is, that's 10 milliwatts, right?
20 would be 100.
Okay, sorry, 100 milliwatts.
Yep.
And they have been heard by nobody.
ZS1 LCD?
Yes. Actually, I just noticed, never mind, it says TX 0%, so that would be why they haven't been heard, and that's on 30 meters. It's interesting they knew the call sign.
Well, it's because I just brought up the webpage too.
Oh.
I'm cheating.
So yeah, there's that one. There's another station also apparently is transmit 0% at the moment. You can see the Europeans can hear each other quite well, and that right now there's a bit of an opening to New Zealand from Europe.
From Europe?
So,
oh, nice. Oh, yeah, I see it. Yeah. Going out east.
So that's, I mean, that's pretty cool. And you know, when you click on one of these stations on this, and this is WSPRnet.org. When you click on some of these stations, it'll tell you who they've heard or who has heard them, and then you know, it'll tell you if they're transmitting, what their power level is, and various and sundry other pieces of information. So that's actually pretty cool. Well, looking at this, if you're in Northern California, you might be able to get into New Zealand right now.
I am smack dab halfway between San Jose and Los Angeles. You see that little kind of triangular shape sticking out of California in the south end?
Yes.
I'm at the very northern part of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not very familiar with the far left coast.
That's pretty much all I've ever known.
Yeah, that's okay. We still like you.
Well, thank you.
So this is really awesome, and I very much support your comment about, you know, we do it because we can. Some really great projects have been that way. I in going through your YouTube channel, I saw that you also have a fascination with clocks.
I don't know. You get your bleeper buzzer ready, but my friends call me a clock fiend. Yes.
It's one of those things that for a while I started going down the route of trying to buy. It started with looking at old, I forget the name of the company, the GPS receivers that come out of cell sites that are really good, that have the, it's like a GPS discipline oscillator, and then getting into like the 10 megahertz rubidium sources and things like that. And then I talked to Tapper a year or two ago, and they had some stuff for people who are time geeks. And I don't know why that's so interesting, but I do enjoy just setting up like microcontroller, or well, actually more single board computers to try to set up clocks and whatnot. We successfully replaced a Costco special weather station in our kitchen with a Raspberry Pi installed with a GPS receiver, just using the one PPS signal to keep the clock synchronized. And there's a gentleman who wrote this really awesome Python library for showing like your weather, your forecast, and radar views in a nice big clock. But yes, yeah, time stuff is cool.
Yeah, I my first clock, which I was just showing you on the Skype feed, is a analog panel meter clock. So it was made out of old school analog panel meter movements that are 1 milliamp full scale, and it's literally just an Arduino through a variable resistor, through like I think it's either a 10K or a 1K trim pot into the meter, and then using pulse width modulation, it sets a value on the meter, and I redid the panels on the meter so that they read 0 to 60 seconds, 0 to 60 minutes, and 0 to 24 or 0 to 12 hours. I think I only did 12 on that one, and outputting because 240 ticks fits really nicely into an 8-bit value of 256 values, 240 ticks, and you get a quarter of a tick or 1 tick per quarter of a second, and you get this really nice smooth movement of the meters as they tick up in time. That was my first clock.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we talked
actually for the.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say there's so locally, the Radio Shacks that I still have open don't really carry too much in the hobbyist stuff anymore. I actually talked to another listener that they were able to build a project by going to Radio Shack, but we have a local chain called Micro Center, which is very similar to what you have out there called Fry's.
Yep.
But they have a huge like electronics hobbyist section where everything from selling base components to like if you want to go get a Hakko FX 888 Delta, you can go get one. They have oscilloscopes and power supplies and all kinds of awesome stuff. But there is a kit by Velleman that is exactly what you just showed. That's basically a little analog movement clock with a microcontroller, but I think it comes with a pick, but same concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I cribbed that idea from a Make magazine many years ago. I saw that in the Make magazine, and this is when I was in my steampunk phase. I'm like, I need that clock, and so I built it.
Well, we've talked a lot about the Whisper Station and it being a good kit and everything. I'm really curious what's next for you. What's on, maybe the question for you is what's on your workbench right now, or what's going to be on your workbench?
So what's on my workbench right now? Well, so at work, we have a little internal security conference that we're going to be running in March. And I am running a hardware hacking village at this security conference. And so I've been working on this little microcontroller kit that is ESP8266 based. It has a serial module. It has a little 0.96 inch OLED display and a couple of buttons and some WS2812 RGB LEDs. And so it's just a little kit that's simple enough for noobs to be able to solder, people who have never soldered before to be able to learn the technique and whatnot. And then they have something that is useful for them when they're done. It's a little ESP8266 that is a Wi-Fi enabled microcontroller. It's an amazingly powerful microcontroller given that they cost $2 in quantity, and they have Wi-Fi built into them and everything, and they can be programmed by the Arduino IDE. They are not Atmels, so they're not AVR based, but you can get a compiler stack for it that will work with the Arduino IDE, and a lot of the Arduino libraries work with it as well. And so, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Anyway, so we're doing that. That's what's on the bench right now. I'm going to be heading up to your old hometown, Seattle, in a few weeks to go to that conference and to go run that. When I am done with that, what's next? So I have been working on my YouTube channel. I've been working on a headphone amplifier. That is a little bit unique in its inputs and outputs and requirements. We could be here for another half an hour talking about that if you wanted to. Instead, I'm just going to say go to my YouTube channel, Smitty Halibut, SMITTYHALIBUT. I've got a playlist on my channel there for the Halibut amp. Go watch the first episode where I go into details of what it is that I'm trying to build and why I'm trying to build it and how it's unique and it's different than other headphone amplifiers. But I've been working on that one for several years. I've got lots of kind of individual proof of concept parts that nothing that I can easily grab and show you, but lots of individual parts that I've tested, but now I need to put it all together into one project. I'm hoping that turns into a product at some point. But the most recent distraction from that is I wanted to make a clock for my bedside table, right? But I wanted the colors to change because I want it to be red at night so it doesn't screw up my vision and keep me awake. But I want it to be green in the day because I don't know why I like green better. And I want it to never want to have to set the time on it. So it's got to be NTP controlled. And I also want to have multiple USB ports on my bedside table that I can charge my phone and my watch and my headphones because I'm one of those dirty Apple users. So I have an Apple Watch and AirPods. And so I've got three things that need to be charged and plugged in and charged every night. So I want to have those ports there. And I haven't been able to find a clock that does all the things that I want. So I'm making one because why not?
I saw a video of that earlier. The other convenient thing about the red green is, hey, it just so happens they make LEDs that do that.
Well, I'm actually going to be doing WS2812s because you can control an entire string of them with a single pin.
Yeah.
And so the little $2 ESP8266 modules that I buy by the dozen, they only have very limited GPIO. You got two pins that are dedicated to a serial port and two more GPIO pins, one of which has to be a button that you use to tell it to program it, right? So you really only get one usable GPIO pin. There's not a whole heck of a lot you can do with these things, but you can control a string of WS2812s.
And for those of you who don't know, a WS2812 is also known as a NeoPixel.
Yes.
So interestingly enough, there's a project that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, not clock related. Somewhere to Make magazine, I think, is where I originally saw this, but there was a guy who built a giant mission control board that kind of simulated some of the stuff from the Apollo capsule and some of the stuff from Mission Control. Let me take a note to find this video, because I mean, this video, number one, makes me feel like the worst father ever. And because I mean, this guy, he built, like I said, he built a console desk. It's basically like during the day, it's like a desk you could actually do work on, but then you flip the top open and then there's all of these controls and it's all microcontroller control. There's all these LEDs and he even built the grids with like the status lights and lamps
Yep.
from the command module and stuff. And he even put in like programmed in fake missions. So for instance, when they have the main bus undervolt, like you can actually go stir the O2 tank and have a blowout and simulate that.
Oh God, no.
Oh, it gets better. And so for his most recent version, if I remember correctly, he made like a space shuttle simulator, and he actually bought a very kind of a miniature robotic plastic arm that's maybe like, fully extended. Maybe it's 18 inches long, and built a little porthole like it's the arm module that used to be in the space shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm the worst father ever. But what I can do is some of those modules that Adafruit sells with the NeoPixels in them, they have a lot of different form factors. I really like the rings they have. I always wanted to build a clock out of them since they make a 60 pixel ring, which I think you actually just showed on camera.
I did.
Or it's four 15s that you put together in a 60 pixel ring.
Yeah. So if you want to build that, I actually... Okay, so speaking of my channel, I have 2 episodes. One where I start with a blank page in a schematic layout program, and I lay out the circuit, and I lay out the board, and when I'm done with that episode, I am placing an order on Oshpark for the boards. Those boards are also publicly available, and you can get the board yourself if you want. Hook up a WS2812 ring to it and ESP8266 and power, and you have your clock.
Wow. That is super awesome. I will have to make sure to put links to clock stuff and actually your YouTube channel in general. Yay. So, just out of curiosity, you operate Whisper. You don't like to rag chew. Do you ever do any other digital modes? Like, do you ever sit down and be like, I'm going to PSK 31 now?
I do occasionally, not super often, but yeah, I do. When I get on HF, that's one of the first things I usually try. One of the problems, like I mentioned, the noise floor at my house is absolutely rubbish. On 80 meters, it is routinely S8 or S9 noise floor. Just like you tune to a dead portion of the band where there's nobody talking, and the S meter is up at S8 or S9. It's absolutely horrendous. All I can hear, and maybe that contributes to my opinions of what HF is all I can hear are the guys who are putting out 1.5 gallons of power and sitting there rag chewing, right? I can't hear the weak stations or the ones that I actually want to talk to. 40 meters is usually around an S7. 20 meters when it's open is like an S6 or S5 of noise floor, but it's only open during the day when I'm at the office, right? I'm usually doing all of my operating at night, so I'm pretty much limited to 80, 40, and 30. And so, yeah, I do go over to digital modes because they are much better about noise and dealing with noise and whatnot than single sideband is.
I forgot to ask you the most important question, which is beside the little QRP Labs kit, what radio do you have for HF or radios?
Yeah, no, I've got one main HF radio. It's an FT920, which is old school Yaesu. They did some DSP stuff in audio. I don't think it was IF DSP.
No, it was not.
Yeah, no, so this is circa 99, 2000, 2001-ish. I don't remember exactly when. I actually inherited it from a club at the company I was working at the time. The company went out of business, and the ham club that we had at the time kind of dissolved, and I ended up with the gear from it.
Well, cool. So the last thing I've been asking people is, as you tinker, and especially you have a very deep background in electronics and electronic design, do you have any tips or, things you've learned or things you wish you would have learned earlier that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Oh, good grief.
Told you, surprise hard question.
No kidding. The biggest tip I think I can give is don't be afraid to try something. The easiest way that I have found to learn something is to try and find a problem that you need to solve, right? Something in your life that's like, man, I really wish I had bleh, whatever bleh is, right? And use that as an opportunity to go learn how to do that thing, right? So as a very naive example, man, I really wish I had a ring of 60 LEDs, color controlled LEDs, and that I could control with a microcontroller that would always do NTP to make sure that the clock is always synchronized, right? Well, okay, that's not something I need, but I have an application in mind, right? I have something that I'm trying to solve, and when you've got that kind of clarity of I want to accomplish a thing, that makes the going into the project and figuring out how to do that thing a lot easier. I have people who come to me and say, it's like, I want to get into electronics. How do I do it? I'm like, well, what do you want to do with electronics? I don't know. I want to learn Arduino. It's the buzzword of the day, right? That's not kind of how you go about it. The Arduino or the project or whatever technology, ham radio, whatever it is, it's not its own thing, right? It is a solution to a problem. And what is that problem for you? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Well, I want to talk to people, or I want to learn technologies. Great, you want to learn technologies. What kind of technologies? Well, I want to learn about radio stuff. I don't know anything about radio. Okay, well, let's go find a radio project, right? And so Whisper is a good example of that, but there are lots of other things. The BitX40 is a good way of learning radio. My friend Nick, Exploding Lemur, he is very interested in higher frequency things, up in the UHF and microwave. And so he and I talk about the RF projects that we're doing, and he's much more interested in the ATSB or whatever the airplane beaconing system is. I can't remember what the acronym is. It's up around like 1.9 gigahertz or something.
Yep.
And so he's talking about the stuff that he's doing. Well, I made an LNA and this filter system, and he's got these little tiny components on this little tiny board with the zip line, the strip line, and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have to worry about that at 80 meters, right, or at 40 meters or whatever band. I got a wire and I kind of run it from here over to there, and it works, right? But so we have different problems that we're trying to solve. He wants to go receive these beacons that the airplanes are putting out so that he can graph them on a screen. And we also happen to live in the middle of California, in between the Bay Area and LA. And so we're in a bit of a dead zone for some of the more citizen receivers on that stuff, that project. Forgive me for sounding ignorant, because I completely am. Talk to him. ADSB. Thank you, Kenneth.
Yes. I'm guessing you might be talking about Flight Aware.
Yes, that's the one. I think that's the one anyway. Anyway, go hit up Exploding Lemur on Twitter and ask him about it if you're curious. He'll be able to talk your ear off on it. But he has this thing that he's trying to accomplish, and he used that as the impetus to go learn the thing. He learned about RF layout and strip lining and microwave amplifiers and LNAs and dishes, and he's got a tower in his backyard now. And right, so he used this one thing of, I want to go do this thing, and he dove into it, and he wasn't afraid to fail. And he luckily we get paid reasonably well, so we're able to afford to fail. That's one thing that hardware has working against it compared to software, right? The software, the tools are basically free. If you have a computer, which most people have anyway, you can iterate as much as you want, and all you're doing is compiling and burning a little bit of energy. In hardware, when you iterate, you actually have to buy atoms, and atoms are not infinitely reproducible. They're not infinitely copyable. So there is a little bit of a cost there, and so you want to kind of go a little bit slower when you're doing hardware and make a little bit more sure. But don't be afraid to rev your board a couple of times, or go into the project knowing that you're going to rev your board a couple times, or that you might have to bodge something and say, oh, well, I screwed up that part of it. Let me, swap out this component or cut this trace or whatever, right? It's not the end of the world if you have to do that sort of thing.
No, and like you said, I mentioned, I think before technically we started recording this, fail fast, fail forward, meaning learn from your mistakes.
Yep.
And if you never make any mistakes, I don't think you learn anything. And quite frankly, if you don't and you know everything already, you're not having fun while you're doing it.
Don't want to be the smartest guy in the room.
No. In fact, I always said, so my big talent in my career has always been surrounding myself by people who are smarter than me. So, no, that's really good advice. We've talked about that before, that, everybody talks about Blink for Arduino as the hello world, but I always said it wasn't enough. If you have an actual project or a problem that you want to solve, then you also have more of a vested interest in following along in someone else's book Those books are important along the way of your journey, but following somebody else's project book, while it may give you some fundamentals, like it's not going to create, I don't think, the drive to continue forward.
Yeah. You really got to have that project in mind, what it is you're trying to accomplish. And don't think that it has to be something unique or original, right? That's another trap that people fall into. It's like, well, I kind of thought about doing this, but other people have done it already. So do it again. Do it some other way. Tweak it a little bit, right? I guarantee you that I am not the first person to have made a 60 LED ring clock, but I went ahead and did mine anyway. I did it the way I want to do it. I'm not the first person to have built a U3 kit, right? I'm not the first person to have designed a headphone amplifier or a low-pass filter kit, right? I mean, I've done a lot of these things not because it's original, but because it's new to me. It's original to me. I haven't done it before, which means that I get to learn from it, from the process.
Well, outstanding advice. Smitty, anything else you would leave our listeners with?
No. I mean, just, get out there and do stuff. Have fun with it. Find something that you enjoy and dive into it.
Outstanding. Well, Smitty, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to spend with us and the listeners. I can guarantee you we will have you back on some of these topics, and I very much look forward to it.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It was my pleasure. I've had a great time, and I've had a great time listening to you guys and Kale, and thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for listening. Don't forget to tell your friends.
I will.
All right. Thank you, sir. 73.
Cheers, mate. 73.
Okay. So that's where the recording will stop.
Okay.
And now we can continue our conversation. That was awesome.
The after show.
I have, yeah. Watch out, folks. The 10 o'clock show gets a little blue.
And you 7 people in the chat room will get to see the after show that most of the Ham Radio 360 listeners don't get to see.
They will not get to hear.
No. Or hear.
I mean,
that's right.
Technically, I'll put a link to this.
True.
It's not,
true.
It's not like we're going to go like super frivolous, dirty, gratuitous.
That too.
Yeah. So one of the things that when I was an undergrad in school, I had some ridiculously smart friends, and I tried to learn from them a lot. And I found out that I always rounded out groups because I had things like social skills and could talk to people.
I have people skills. What's wrong with you people? Sorry, go on.
I carried the requirements from the customer down to the engineers. But actually, every time I get to talking with folks like you, and having spent a lot of time with some of George's friends, if it weren't for the fact that there are a few key political incompatibilities, I swear that part of the country is where I should have wound up. Although,
I'm sorry, which part of the country?
Just, I don't know, somewhere on the Silicon Valley,
okay,
California tech scene. I very much miss Seattle. I was only there. It was a little under 2 years, but it was one of the best experiences of my life. So, sorry, somebody was pinging me, which is funny because I haven't talked to them in forever. Yeah, it's weird. I can't believe Skype's still around.
Well, I think podcasting is single-handedly keeping Skype afloat. Oh, I don't know how they make money off of it, but
they don't. I mean, that's the thing. We don't pay a dime for this.
But it's still the only thing going for this kind of work, though.
Well, there are several services. There are 2 other major corporate ones, but here's the proof in the pudding. I can't remember what they're called. One of them is actually called Cast. Cast is interesting because you host, I think, a client on your computer. The people you're trying to call into can run something through like Chrome, and there is a whatchamacallit, you get a high quality like WAV file on both ends of the recording, and then there is a cloud service, because of course #cloud, that allows you to access those. I mean, the audio quality from Skype isn't terrible. Well, George and I have done a couple episodes where we both recorded locally, and just editing, the increase in sound quality was not worth the effort of editing 2 files together when people can't synchronize when they hit start.
Well, not only that, you have the problem that Skype has variable delays in the audio stream. So I used to do a podcast with 3 guys total, me and 2 others. And we originally did it entirely on Skype before we found out how you can get Skype doing peer-to-peer, and everything went through a server, and it invariably chose some relay server on the other side of the world, and so delays were horrible. We ended up trying the whole local recording thing. It sounded great, but yeah, I was the one doing the audio production on that, and it's a raging pain in the ass to get that all synced up.
Oh yeah, no, it is. Yeah, one of the things that's interesting is, so we just changed our workflow a little bit. So I'm a Mac user because I'm also a dirty Apple fanboy. And so I had a plugin for Skype that was called probably Skype Call Recorder, something really original. And it would record everything as like video files. They have a tool, you get the audio out of it. The audio is horrendously mismatched between your local and the remote. But I was able to put a workflow together. It took a long time. Then we got licenses for this software called Hindenburg Journalist Pro, which is like, if you work for NPR, this is what you use when you're producing stories like in a war zone or something.
Okay.
One of the selling features of the Pro version is integration with Skype. And so, for instance, I'm recording you directly into that application by the call coming through. But I don't think they're very good developers. Because number one, the Mac app can't go truly full screen. Number two, it doesn't work with Skype anymore. Like, they advertise we can record with Skype, but in order to get this to work, I have to download Skype 7.10, which is like 3 years old.
Oh, nice.
And which actually, the message when I logged in tonight was that this version will no longer work with Skype in like a month. And so then they just posted this thing. It's like, oh, we fixed the Skype problem. As long as you use, what was it, Soundflower, or one of the Rogue Amoeba like sound routing applications that used to be free and now is expensive. And I was like, then you didn't solve the problem, and then I can go back to using my preferred software of choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, podcasting.
To make it all more complicated, I'm doing it all on Ubuntu, which is known for its audio video editing prowess.
Said no one ever.
Yeah.
Workflows what'll kill you.
Yeah. Do you have to do anything special to integrate with what Kale is doing?
First of all, we're rarely on, I call it the flagship show. We're rarely on flagship anymore. As far as getting the files to him, George and I completely handle post-production. So I will, I'm always the one that records. He has a backup recording of his audio just in case something goes wrong. The mixer I'm using actually is a completely software-defined mixer. The only thing on this mixer are inputs and outputs, an Ethernet jack, and Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So I bought this thing. It was like $250. It's made by Behringer. I bought this thing because I was looking for an integrated channel strip that would give me compression, EQ, de-essing, noise gate, etc. And I didn't want to spend $1,200 on an Apollo. Well, I wanted to, but I wasn't going to on an Apollo. But anyway, this thing's pretty good, and so it's running into my sound card interface in the computer. But as a USB port that it can record a down mix, a stereo down mix. If you buy the high-end one, you actually can get individual tracks. But it works pretty well for what's going on. So we record, I have the master, I go through and I cut out the BS in the beginning and the BS in the end. I will ISO any particularly fun lines if we do Easter eggs. And then I handle all of the initial like dynamics. So like George's EQ, just in case anybody ever has to mix George, I always have to do a 12 dB cut at 300 hertz for his particular voice. And then there's a 4 dB boost at I think 1.2K to give him his signature his signature sound.
Okay, so he's going to sound totally different when I meet him in person.
Yeah. Actually, but one thing that's really interesting that I noticed this is 300 hertz is a resonant frequency in my car. And so it was like super annoying. So I will admit I mix George's audio so it doesn't annoy me in my commutes, because I actually do listen to every single episode. That's part of the reason why I've gotten better over the years. George still edits out ums and ahs, and I'm like, I'm just got better at not saying them, or I don't care.
Yeah, some combination. No, I'm still horrible with ums and ahs. You were talking about I don't even remember. Dang it. brain just farted.
Workflow,
No, don't worry about it.
Ubuntu.
No, it's gone.
You know what you should do?
What's that?
Get Kenneth in here.
Oh, hey.
Add him to the call.
I think video goes away if I try to add a third person. Hey, Kenneth, you want to join us? Want to do an audio only? Stand by. Do-do-do.
How many people are still watching?
7.
All right. So for you 7 people, I'll also say that Twitter has been my favorite thing that I've engaged with in the last year. So in a previous life, I was director of digital marketing for 2 different agencies, one in Louisville and one in Seattle. And Twitter was initially for marketers a solution looking for a problem. And I would often get in trouble because we were trying to sell social specialists who would run your Twitter, but the model didn't work out yet. Companies were like, oh, we should engage with customers, but they weren't brave enough to actually do that.
Yeah.
But I have found that it's my feed is relatively free of political mishmash, and I have met some freaking smart, friendly, helpful people.
Well, I don't even. Hang on. Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4, Z1, Z2 is watching. Hi, Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4, Z1, Z2. You have quite possibly the hardest YouTube handle to verbalize. I'm just going to call you Z's.
But if you're like Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4, Z1, Z2, then it's a little more fun.
Started French and then ended up count.
5 Z's.
Kenneth says, "Give me a sec." So, unfortunately, I don't have him on Skype.
What does the Twitterverse say?
Yeah, I enjoy Twitter a lot as well. Unfortunately, I cannot claim that mine is relatively free of political crap.
Actually, the one thing that's funny is there are a couple of famous people that I follow. They're the ones who have really become like uber political.
Yeah.
Like Adam Savage from Mythbusters.
Yeah.
I loved the show, number one. Really appreciate Adam Savage because he's done a lot of work about sharing. And they've more formulated what the tested. I don't know if you're familiar with tested. But I mean, since Mythbusters went away and he's actually like more involved in it, it's been pretty cool. But I have noticed he has just gotten super political, although in a human friendly kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like I don't want to hear either side of it, but I still love him.
Oh, hey, look.
I'm not one of those people that's like, I am unfollowing you.
Yeah. Actually, he was just having that conversation with people today, actually. He's like, yeah, no, I'm a human, and I have opinions, and I'm going to express those opinions.
Yes. It's just like people on YouTube that's like, unfollow.
Kenneth Finnegan, California. Let's do that. Boop. Boop, boop, boom, boop, boop, boop. Boop. Okay. So let's see here. Can I add him to the call? There's a plus. Add participants. Add people to this call. Kenneth. Add. I think I just tried to add him. Oh, hey, he says.
Can you hear him?
No, he's not actually on yet. He just texted me.
Oh.
Let's try that again. I have no idea what that's going to do. Okay. This is terribly exciting, isn't it?
Sorry to disappoint you. 1Z, 2Z, 3Z, 4Z, 1Z, 2Z. Oh, I did it wrong. Z1, Z2. It would be easier if numbers were first.
Now you're criticizing his handle.
Well, I'm iterating on improvements.
Spoken like a true sprint master.
There you go.
Oh, come on. Kenneth, are you seeing my invites?
Do you even Skype, bro?
Do you even Skype?
So this Mac is, I think 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old now. It was the last generation MacBook Pro before the Retinas came out, and had an optical drive. My wife spilled an entire 20-ounce Diet Coke inside of it, and to her credit, she did such a good job disassembling it and cleaning it out that when I took it to the local Mac shop when I was in DC, that has a professional cleaning service, they're like, I actually only had to spend about 5 minutes. Like, the dude was like, I could only really find one spot where there was residue. So your wife did a fantastic job. I said, sweet. But at the time, I had them pull out the optical drive and install this.
I think we got Kenneth on the call. Are you there, Kenneth? Well, that's perfect because that's perfect because that is what your picture on the Skype logo is. You on the work headset.
Yeah, well, I hadn't logged into Skype.
Check one.
Yep,
we lose
just
you?
lost Kenneth.
Pew.
They killed Kenneth.
We are of an age. Well, I guess that show's been going on forever, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm only
Are we back?
I'm 30.
There you are.
Yeah, there you are.
I got dead air now.
Check 1 2. Do you hear us? We can hear you, Kenneth.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm eating peanuts. Can you hear me eat peanuts?
Yes, we can. But can Kenneth hear us?
It makes me so happy. Well, there's a guy in my club. The vice president of my club lives in Columbus, and we try to Skype him in every meeting. Ooh, I just got a security cam alert.
All right, now I think we're back.
Check 1 2. Can you hear us?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, we could hear you the entire time.
Oh,
Yes.
that's awkward. Well, yeah. So welcome to me being in the Silicon Valley, the third world country of internet connections.
Yeah, well, there is that.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, well, it's a bunch of unplanned suburbia. So
A bunch of unplanned suburbia, and they also got some of the earliest infrastructure, which hasn't all been upgraded yet.
yeah, has it? I guess there is some fiber optic cables somewhere. Like somewhere in the Bay Area, there's possibly some fiber somewhere. But yeah,
It's in the back of a van.
North Bay, actually, Sonic. Seriously, Sonic has been wiring up most of the North Bay. I don't know. I don't think there's any independent ISPs down in the South Bay anymore. I used to work for an ISP in Santa Clara called Internex back in the mid '90s. We did ISDN when everybody was still on 14.4K modems. That was good fun.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess there's a bunch of wireless ISPs. I'm helping a buddy. Oh, what was that? Like three or 4 weeks ago, I got to help a buddy load in their main core router for a wireless ISP into Hurricane Electric's new Fremont facility.
Oh, nice.
Oh man, what a beautiful, beautiful data center.
Yeah,
But
I work for, well, the company I work for has many large data centers. I haven't actually been inside one since 2009, but back then they were a thing to behold.
yeah, it was good fun because we were loading in three racks. This is my buddy's actually one of the guys that runs the APRS IS core servers.
Oh,
Oh
And
wow.
so, yeah. Well, I mean, like why not, right? I'm the APRS dude apparently. Um, so we were loading in three racks. So he's from like out in the East Coast somewhere. So he flies in, and then he knows that I'm a guy with a pickup truck and nothing to do on the weekends. So we go over to a different data center in Santa Clara and like an office in San Jose, and we load up my truck with a bunch of 6U routers with 200 gigabit ports and a couple dozen 10 gig network ports on them. And we go rack them up in these three racks that are generally next to each other. One for the wireless ISP, one for one of his buddies that I don't even know who it was, and the third one was just for him and the APRS servers and his own little cluster that he's got there.
you K6 KWF?
W6.
W6, so close.
Yeah. Right. And that was actually mainly motivated for getting the W6 because I got my license right when they got the no code tech thing in 2007.
Oh, no code tech's been around a lot longer than 2007.
Well, yeah, they dropped the code completely.
Oh, no code extra. Okay.
Yeah, no code at all. Like just they got rid of element 1.
Yeah.
You're ruining ham radio. You are everything that's wrong with ham radio.
Well, particularly since I was at that point going to college out in the Central Valley, and there was no collegiate ham presence at that point. And so my exclusive exposure to amateur radio was through the, county amateur radio general interests club. And the guys in there, I mean, there were some good guys in the club, but there was a lot of guys that made it very clear that as a young whippersnapper without a Morse code,
you were worthless.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was part of my motivation to get a W6 call sign was because then they all sat up and went, "Oh, wait, you can't be an extra." And I'm like, "No, I am an extra. It's not because of my call sign, but thanks for thinking that's still how that numbering sequence works."
Yeah.
All right. So it was kind of part because I kind of like the W6 and part because it was just psychological warfare because back in like the 60s or 70s, like a W6 was an extra issued or whatever.
Oh, I think it was more so more recently than that even, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the 1x3s were 1x3s. Were they advanced or were they extra? I guess the advanced were doing 2x2s.
Yeah, the advanced were 2x2s.
Yeah, right, because KR6ZX was the last advanced call sign they handed out in California. That's how I ended up with KR6ZY. That's right. We just told that story this morning.
We just talked about that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I had always assumed that you just picked that as a neat vanity, so that was an even better story than I assumed. Right, but so it was great. It was nice and short. It was distinctive, which apparently means everyone gets it wrong. And it wasn't until later that I realized that Google requires at least 6 characters for Gmail accounts.
So you couldn't be W6KWF at Gmail?
I cannot.
Oh, wah, wah. Sad
you
trombone.
could be the W6KWF.
Wow. I mean,
the real W6KWF.
Yeah. Clearly, I need
genuine.
to get all of these.
Official.
Yep. Okay, so just all the adjectives. W6KWF Gmail. Got it. All right.
Oh, we're losing listeners. We're down to 5 now.
That's fine.
Yeah,
in fact, if we wanted to, we could take this party private.
Oh, you want me to stop streaming? What?
Well, I mean, one of those was me.
Oh, did you just drop out? I guess you did. Yeah, wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, when the call opened up, then I had the stream going at the same time. So I'm like, oh god, this is gonna be awful. So I'm trying to close the tab on one computer and bring up tethering on my phone and get a microphone plugged in the third computer. And then when I close the tabs, I've got 15 YouTube videos queued up in tabs, so those start firing off. And
what could possibly go wrong?
Right, because I don't actually have internet at home. My entire apartment hangs off of my complex's community Wi-Fi with a client bridge.
Hence, third world of internet connectivity.
Yeah, right. And so we have a better time tethering to a phone than using my home internet, because my home internet is several Wi-Fi hops.
Oh God.
Wow.
And eventually a Comcast business account shared with 120 units.
And are you unable to get your own internet connection?
Oh no, I totally could, but that's $50 a month. I really couldn't justify, since I live in an apartment with free internet. I mean, why not to use it?
Because you can't.
Well, it's most of my internet workload is either Git or streaming video, and streaming video is relatively latency insensitive, and Git is extremely latency insensitive. So the only place it matters is for live streaming and podcasting.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I guess.
But,
I don't know. I just when I moved here, I was in they put me in a residence inn for a month, and I had to share a 20 megabit connection with 20 units. And there was a family that was in the same place because their house had burned down, but they had 3 kids that did nothing but play some game, Xbox something. And so I actually called AT&T and I was like, up my bandwidth limit to 50 gigs this month because I'm going to kill people because I can't download stuff.
Oh, and you just did everything on your cell.
Yeah, which, I mean, to be honest with you, where I was staying at the time was really close to the tower. I was averaging probably 20 megabits a second, even during peak usage times.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you pay them for it, they'll give you QoS.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. So I like literally the like, meme is what I would feel every time that I had to deal with that, Kenneth.
Fudge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's actually, I don't know. Clearly they had a company come in and do it, because they have it's a really nice band plan they have set up. They've got like 60-degree sector antennas on every building pointed at the next building over. There's clearly QoS stuff going on, because it's like each device gets 12 megabits symmetric. So with the exceptions of, primetime Thursday and Friday night, it actually is not that bad, except for the fact that it's only 12 megabits. But I mean, whatever. And so, yeah, just for, the YouTube uploads, I just take them to work on a flash drive. And normally I just
sneaker net.
right.
As the
'Cause,
work IT guy, I hate you.
Well, yeah, and I make sure to only do it at like 8 a.m. and it, even my uncompressed MPEG-2 videos still only take, 40 seconds on the work internet to upload. So
Yeah,
Right.
you have to get a security exception at my job to even have access to YouTube. And there are 2 classes. There are some people that can only get that exception for 8 hours. And then I'm in the pool that has it all the time. But when I watch a video that they don't believe I should have watched, I get an email about it.
Yeah.
Are you willing to say where you work?
Bad.
No,
Okay,
not
fair
at all.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, my
'Cause,
work isn't quite that bad.
No,
but
granted, that's the internet,
go-
but at
go
least
for
at least I have a Mac. And I had to literally do some major wheeling and dealing to get rid of my sweet Lenovo L440 series, which has a Wi-Fi chipset that I think interferes with something in there because it never works ever. In fact, it was so bad that Lenovo only made the L440s for like 3 months, and I think we bought all of them. We would have these big planning events. There'd be 400 people in a single building trying to, share a 150 megabit connection over a very multi-honed Wi-Fi network, and nobody could connect to anything. Like, it just wouldn't work.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our work isn't that bad. They do a pretty good job of the stuff they block online is really pretty well justified, like Reddit. The problem is that they block all other protocols except for HTTP, HTTPS, and it seems like Telnet. So I
like port 23?
I know, like it's super bizarre. Like a couple of my buddies and I, we've been probing it. We've been trying to figure out what their criteria are, and it seems like the firewall is very organic. Like some days it does this, and other days it's a little bit like it's constantly changing behavior.
Interesting.
Right, and so then they intercept our HTTPS connections for everything except for like Gmail and banks.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything else all have company certificates with our company installed as a certificate authority.
Yep.
Except that the company certificate authority is signed with a SHA-1, and so every website except for Gmail and banks comes up as an SSL warning in Chrome.
Your IT company, your IT guys or girls are running Ironport WSAs. I'll tell you that right now. Ask me off the stream why I know this.
Yeah. Well, whatever it is, they often get overloaded. So whatever it is, it's grossly under-provisioned for 7,000 people. So.
Well, they're also very expensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It seems like that sounds right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I am the guy at my company that runs those devices. So, among other things, but yeah, that's
yeah. But yeah, it was fun on Monday, which was a holiday for most normal people. But hey, I was in the office working because the program I'm on right now kind of hit the fan last month. I'm on the 4th week now of 12-hour days. It's pretty bad. But I was in on Monday, and I'm like, hey, I'll just crank out the next Apers podcast episode with Kale. And so I go to set up the Skype call, and the firewall on Monday has decided that Skype wasn't a thing. So no Skype through company firewall.
Well, I guess
Nice.
I can't complain too much. My employer does provide. We are not allowed to plug in our own devices onto the company network, but they do provide a guest and mobile Wi-Fi, which is just straight up internet connectivity. No firewalls, no proxying, no monitoring, no nothing. It's just literally a direct internet connection, which is pretty convenient for any personal devices.
That is nice.
Yeah.
Why don't we go off stream?
Oh, what? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me go ahead and wrap this up then, since, it's technically on my stream. I'm Smitty Halibut. You know that because you're following me on YouTube. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter or post down below. You can also hit Jeremy. He's KF7IJZ on Twitter. And Kenneth Finnegan is KWF on Twitter.
Nice and short.
Nice and short. Yeah, it's been 2 hours, so it's probably about time for me to stop anyway. So also go listen to the Ham Radio 360 podcast, especially the Workbench episodes, if you want to hear more of Jeremy's sultry tones. And yeah.
Dulcet. They're
Dulcet
tones.
Dulcet tones.
There we go. What did I say? Sultry tones?
I have a coworker who listens to our podcast because she doesn't understand a thing we're talking about, but she loves the sound of my voice.
You do have a really good voice. I have
really?
to not
Thank
disagree
you.
with her.
I've worked on this over 37 years.
Well, it's true. So Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4, Z1, Z2 says that their local hospital, they blocked the official Britney Spears website because that is the wretched hive of scum and villainy on the internet that needs to be blocked.
She has done it again.
Oh.
So that makes sense.
Oh.
And with that, we are going to leave you. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Like I said, go check out Kenneth. You're on YouTube as well. What are you on? Are you just KWF on YouTube?
No, I think so. It's super confused because I had a YouTube account before it was Google. So I think there's like Kenneth.Finnegan or Kenneth Finnegan. I think will get you there. I think Firefly with PH's 2007. It's a mess. Just search for me.
You just search for Kenneth Finnegan on YouTube, and you'll find his stuff. Jeremy, you have stuff outside of Ham Radio 360 too, don't you?
I do. Also, if you are interested in seeing my channel, you may find that by looking for KF7IJZ on YouTube.
Sounds good. All right, I think that's all the plugs. We'll catch up with you guys later. We need to go to the private after party so that we can talk about the things.
Double secret party.
The double secret party so that we can talk about the things that we can't talk about with you guys listening. So have fun, and we'll catch up with you next time. Be good humans. Thanks, everyone.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Bye.